Good morning. Morning. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for inviting me to come and share my journey. The topic about reconciliation or about Adriaan Vlok, I need to mention it's a story that the Lord took me to that journey. I mean, why would a Sowetan or somebody grew up in Soweto? I no longer live in Soweto, but where I'm staying is not far from Soweto. It's 15, 20 minutes drive. So why would a Sowetan who grew up under apartheid decide to be a friend? And let me emphasize, a friend. Unashamedly, Vlok and I, we became friends. Can only be the power of the gospel. Can only be God. That's the thing about the gospel. It is scandalous in a good way, you know. So I would like to pray before I share. Me pray. Modimo rona, modimo matla, motsweng o moholo wa Gauteng, ra mema hore o buisane le rona, o nsebedise o seng o kajeko. We thank you for your presence. We thank you for what you are doing in this country. We thank you, Modimo rona, for what you are doing even in our individual's life. We invite your presence, that you guide us, you lead us, anoint the discussions that you will come forth here. We ask this in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Yeah, I thought I must start with a story that you will love it. I love the story. I don't stop talking about it. In 1988, this young man in Sowetan was invited to a church. The church was in Soweto, of course. And in the church, there were like white people. It was very strange in the 80s to have white people in Soweto. In the year was late 80s, 88, 89, somewhere there. So this young man was shocked when he was invited to that church. And there were these, as I said, white people who were there, and then they were worshiping with some few black people. And then he kept coming to church because he was fascinated. Because at that time in Soweto, if you were white, either you were a communist or a priest or a spy. Sorry, or what? Somebody said? Or lecturer. Yes, like you. Yeah, she worked in Soweto for more than 30 years. And it used to be called Vista, right? Yeah, now is the University of Johannesburg. They have a campus there. So yeah, you're one of those. But in the church, and a group of white people who were like, So this young person, he kept coming, and then he was enjoying especially the not so much the songs, but what he was enjoying was the content, what they were talking about. And then after some time, what was interesting about this church was that they would, now and then, they would open up for people to talk. It was unusual. And they used to dress down, you know, black people, they dress up when they go to church, you know, they overdress if there's such a word. So then eventually, there was this particular day that this young man, after a month or so, he started to raise his hand. Before then, he wasn't, because he was feeling intimidated. His English was not, he was not confident with his English. And then eventually, then what happened was that he became bold and he raised his hands. What's her name? Michelle. Yeah, Michelle, this young man, he raised his hand, and then he said, I have something to say. And he pointed to a certain white guy. And then he said, because that white guy had said something, because they opened it for everybody, and then this white guy had said something, it angered this young black person. And then for the first time, this young black person just exploded. Attack this guy. He doesn't even know him. He just saw him a few times in the church. But he said, you must go back to your country, that is Europe. And then you must go there because this is my country, is our country. And everybody was shocked because it was the first time saying that, expressing himself. And then eventually just attack, as I said, attack this guy. He doesn't know him, never met before. And then eventually the guy later, after a few other people commented, the older guy, of course, as I said, was white. He said to him, what's your name? And then he told him his name. And then he said, okay, listen, for your information, I've never been to Europe. I was not even born there. I was born in this country. So this country is my country, as is your country. So that's all I wanted to say. And immediately after he said that, few seconds, the presence of God, overwhelmed this young man. And then he heard these words, you are a racist. He was not told a racist, you are a racist from God. God telling this young black man that you are a racist. And then he forgetting that there were people, he insulated himself, almost like there's no one in the room. He started to sob and he cried. And after he cried, he made this prayer, which is a dangerous prayer. Do not, it's a prayer that is terms and conditions. Those, don't do those prayers. Lord, deliver me to be a member of a church that looks like me, because I'll perpetuate the same poison that I have. And then maybe at this point I must say, that's my story. That young man, that's me. That's my story. And then years later, I was not even aware. I saw myself working with white people, having friends like you guys, and I ended up being a pastor of a white church. It was 98% white people. I don't know, have you ever touched and pastored white people? But I saw in Zulu, Skalk, my friend. I know Skalk is a pastor of Afrikaners here in Gauteng. I don't know, I must pray for you. White people, by Sokolis, Zulu. So I enjoyed to be with these white people. He was in Randburg, and then they would give me challenges. Sometimes they would treat me like as if I'm not a human being. And I must be honest, there were those who really loved me sincerely, were not patronizing me, And I had a privilege to pastor black people. Abantu amnyama, go and be a pastor to the black people. They are noisy, lot of stuff. So I had a privilege to be. Even now, I'm pastoring black people, and I think that's beautiful about our country. We need not to forget that this is not heaven. This is reality that we're immersed, that God has immersed us in. And then I enjoyed to be part of it. And some people they take South African, they take themselves too serious. When you talk about this, they become, uptight and all that. And they don't understand. It's just a joy, to work in this space. Fast forward, one day I thought it's off. One day, I'm invited to a certain conference in George. It's a small airport, so there was a conference there. On my way back, I'm sitting, waiting for my flight. And then I see these three guys are walking. George Airport. I don't know if you've seen George Airport. It's a small airport. It's only for like 15 people. You know, it was built for the former PW Botha, because it's from there, so they had to build a airport. But it's not a big, but it's one of the beautiful. I'm sitting there waiting for my flight. The next thing I see, these three guys are walking in, two big Afrikaners and this one in the middle is tall. And then as they approach, I realized I know this guy. And then I thought, this is Adriaan Vlok. So the one thing about apartheid has made Black people timid, to be scared of white people. And now in the new South Africa, white people are scared of us. You know, isn't it fun? Yeah. I have white people who are scared of me, and then after 10 minutes, they realize I'm just a human being. I was also scared of him. And then here we are. Josh Schneider can tell you, I've been to her house. Most of you have been to your places. And then it's very sad that in this country, our relationships are characterized by fear, suspicion, you know. I must also confess, when Black people are following me, 4 men are following me as a Black, I mean, I'm Black and they follow me, I get nervous. It's a piece of right? When 4 Black people are following you, wouldn't you, you know? But when 4 white people are following you, just like, you know. But these are the realities that we are living in. So I wanted to make a point about the way we relate. We relate so artificially. We patronize each other, you know, and then we use each other. You know, I can use your money, you can use my skin and front. And then after that, we don't even realize that this is fanagalo. You know that Greek word, fanagalo? You know, we do that stuff, you know. And some people are not aware that people are aware of that. Human beings, God created human beings, they can discern, they can pick it up that this is not authentic. This is, you know. So I couldn't help it. I just pounced on Vlok. I mean, imagine. The last time I saw Vlok was on television. But that time it was no longer a minister. It was in the 2000 and something. It was maybe about 15 years ago. And I went to him, and I didn't care who's looking at me. I didn't care. This big, it looked like what do you call boulders? Is it this bouncers? Yeah, they look like English is a terrible. You know, bouncers and boulders are more or less the same. They must be synonymous. So I went to him and I pounced on him. I said, "I know you, I know you, I know you." And I think that I did that for 3 times. And then after that, he froze. And I realized he really froze, and I enjoyed it. You know, that for a few seconds, here's a Black man freezing the all-powerful man who was a minister of law and order. Remember that, law and order. And then I unfroze him. And then I said to him, I want to thank God for what he's done in your life. And then he relaxed. And he said, yeah, bro. You know the Afrikaans. Yeah, bro. What is your name? And I said, yeah, so I don't know Afrikaans, you know, to my shame. And I mean it. When Mandela came out of prison and he spoke in Afrikaans, I don't know you still remember, I was rebuked. I felt like, oh, Trevor, with your arrogance, with your pride. Here's a guy who's been in prison 27 years. He has learned the language. You don't have excuse. So what he did, he asked me my details and we exchanged the numbers, and then we made an appointment in 3 weeks' time. We met, because it was in George. We met here in what's this place? In Midrand. You know that petrol station that's got yeah, we met there. And he came with a 1400 Datsun, you know. And I was like, oh, you know, because for me, he's like a powerful man, though he was no longer. And even the way he was wearing was just a relaxed, you know. And then we sat there for 4 hours. He started to disclose. I mean, he doesn't know me. And then to cut the story short, my journey with Vlok in my culture, I can't call you with your first name. I have a prefix of, if there's such a way, Baba or Maluma, unless we are equals. I think I'm older than you, Torsten. You're the one supposed to call me Grootman. Yeah. No, Grootman. Grootman. And then we started I invited him to the church that I was pastoring. Of course, as I told you, it was a vineyard church in Randburg, which at that time was 90% white. So what we would do, I would just put him there and we would sit and we just talk. And I ask him, tell me about your journey. Tell me how did you grow up and all that, and then he would share his story and we would talk and then we laugh. And then there would be the climax where I talk with him about his politics. How did he end up? So he ended up, of course, he was a member of the Rosebank, if you know, which is one we're talking about, the Afrikaner nationalism, the Rosebank. I was surprised. It was started in Johannesburg to my shop, if you can go and Google, but I don't rely much on Google, but I have some, I had to do for my PhD, I had to read the history of the Afrikaners. And just to say that a little bit and then I'll go back. As I was reading the history of the Afrikaners, I got so angry. And I'll be excited. I'll be happy because I see the hands of God on this nation. There are not many, there are few, but you see what God has done in their lives. And it can be controversial, but there are things that, there are scholars overseas, there's respectable commentators, political analysts who are envious of this nation, the Afrikaners, what they have achieved they arrived in the Dutch, they arrived in 1652, and then when they got their identity, it was in the 1930s, when they worked on their language and all that, And then after that, then you see this Afrikaner nation, like they started to, one of the things that made them big, of course, it's a Broederbond, but there was this AFK, Afrikaner cultural body, that birthed a lot of, they pushed the language, they pushed the, they have a monument, identity, books, a lot of stuff so that the Afrikaners, you can tell me Skalk if, and then it was like, it just became a big nation. Those numbers, but they for the fact that they worked on their language, they worked on their universities, of course at the expense of Black people, which we all know. But just go back to Vlok. So his family, they had 4 brothers, and then his mother, because they grew up in Uppington in Northern Cape, they were coming from a conservative Christianity. His mother adopted a colored guy, but he wouldn't sit with them. He wouldn't eat with them. Whenever there is supper, lunch, or breakfast, he would get his food, but he would sit there by himself. And then I asked Vlok, how was it possible? He said, at that time, there was nothing wrong. I believed in apartheid, Trevor. I believe that I'm better than anybody else. I said, no, we used to play together. He was my brother, but when it's time to eat or time for this, we'd separate. It was normal. So I said, his name was Willem. Why is Willem now? I said, Trevor, I don't know. I don't know why it's Willem. And this was a Christian family. And then eventually, he became the secretary of Foster. What was his first name? BJ Foster. And then he became his the highest secretary, and then he became also BJ Foster, and then after that was who was after PW Both, I think. Yeah. And then hence he got all this position, He became Minister of Law and Order. He became, at some point, he became Minister of, forgotten one of the portfolios, but he was a powerful man. When I became a Christian in the township, it was 1984, the height of apartheid. So the person that we were scared of was not Peter Biko. When you mentioned the name Vlok, because he was a guy who has state of emergency, if you remember, trial, what do you call what? Without trial. Without trial, yeah. There was a militarization, if you remember, in the township. There were distracts. You know, I grew up in that environment. And then I thank the Lord that he changed my life during that time. I remember every twice or thrice a week, I would preach at 2 schools in Soweto, because I was at a Bible college. Morris Isaacson, the famous one where the 1976 riots started. Yeah, I would conduct an assembly there. And I used to be a maverick, bold. I didn't care whether I would be arrested. I was scared. And I would preach there, and I would say radical stuff and all that. And then, so Vlok would tell some of the stories. So I would say, Vlok, have you killed anybody? He says, no. And he would implicitly, indirectly say, yeah, I've made some orders. We use the code language that we must, what's the word? Eradicate. There was another one, yeah. Sorry? Eliminate. Eliminate, yeah, that's the one, yeah. Eliminate, you know. And then he would tell me stories about, there are 2 stories that I would like to share, and then after that, and I open, and then we interact. I don't have to have the answers. It would be good to talk about that. He told me a story when God convicted him to wash the feet of French guy. He said to me, he read a newspaper in Afrikaans of this Afrikaner young man who was on this helicopter, military helicopter, during the early 80s. So they were shooting people in Angola. So they dropped a bomb, and then the debris went like all the way, and there were bodies of babies, you know. And this young Afrikaner, he couldn't forgive himself because he knew what he has done is wrong. And then over the years, God convicted him, and then he wrote a book about his journey, how God delivered him. One of the things, he had to wash the feet of some of his staff, people who were working for him, and these were Black people. So Vlok heard that story, and it worked in his heart, but he just ignored it. Then he heard it on the radio. Somebody gave a testimony about washing the feet of the mother people. And at that time, it was he saw a book, and then he bought it. And as he read it came to this chapter where he talked about washing the feet. And he said, the Lord must be talking to me. This is the 3rd time. And he decided to go do something about that. And one of the person, he started with his domestic work. She's been working for them for 52 years. I had a privilege to meet her because when I was doing my PhD, yeah, I need to put this in a context. I was doing my PhD on something else, not on Vlok. Though we were friends, we were going around part of the country, sharing his story, because it was not my story. People like to say it was our story. No, it was his story because I was interviewing him. So we would go around, of course, share his story. But prior to that, I was doing my PhD on certain subjects. So one of my friends, maybe you know him, Tinyiko, who is a vice chancellor now at TUT in Pretoria, said to me, Trevor, come on, Trevor. You have an access to this guy who's been like a heavy weight in terms of a history of this and the politics and the history of this country. And then I don't know anyone else who's involved in academia, and then I only know you, and you have access to this guy. You can, putting aside your topic, you can always do it, but do it on this guy. So I was like, not sure. And then it took me, like, because you have to deregister and do all of those things. So it took me something like, I think like 9 months to do that and to think about it. So eventually I did on Vlok. And it was easy because that time we were already friends, you know. And yeah, we had amazing times with Vlok. So just to go back to the issues of washing the feet. So he washed his domestic work was being 52 years. And I said, I would like to meet this woman. He says, why, Trevor? Why? I said, no, I would like to, you know. So before I even started my PhD, I came to know her, and then she was an amazing, strong Zulu woman. Have you met strong Zulu women? Oh, you know. They can even fight you. They are like, yeah. So sometimes when I was around, I said I would ask her questions. She says to me, because she's illiterate, she didn't know that her boss was this powerful person. She would say to me, "You guys talk about apartheid and all. I've never seen it in my house, in my boss's house." And I mean, a lot of white people, you go to their houses, they have a good, healthy relationship with black people. I mean, there are those, of course, who are nasty, but when they go out there, it's a different thing. I don't know, you know what I'm talking about. Good relationships, you know. They're not even patronizing them. They will leave them with their houses. They will entrust their children, leave them, you know. So this woman will say, I said, come on, you're telling me what you like me, and she said, listen, la when I'm found out, you know, rubbish. Don't come and tell me rubbish here, you know. And then so we had a good relationship with her, and it was easy for me to take her stuff into my PhD. And then one of the things that Vlok, just to go back to French Ghana, was that God told him to go and wash the feet of French Ghana. He was like, oh. So eventually he agreed to go there. So because he worked in the union building for years, as you can imagine. So he phoned someone there, and then they said, yeah, you can come eventually, but it took a few days, and eventually went in. So he met French Ghana. The reason he chose French Ghana is because he was a priest, as you know. He's a pastor of AFM. I had a privilege to know him for many years. I also integrated him in my PhD. I had to, because of that history of him and Vlok. So he said to him, I'm here to ask for your forgiveness. If you remember, there was a time where they poisoned his clothes. So these were police, but they didn't inform. It was the police. It was not the police. It was the soldiers. But they walk in cahoots with the police, you know. But they didn't tell Vlok, according to Vlok. We don't know. So he decided to because French Ghana was a Christian, but also he was a DG, or working with the president. Remember, he was working with Thabo Mbeki. So then he made an appointment with him, and he asked for forgiveness, and then they spoke, and then he said, I forgive you, I understand, so can you allow me to go? And then he knew God insisted. I said to wash their feet. And then he went like, can I ask you something? He said, what now? Because he said, can I wash your feet? I don't know, some of you, have you seen Vlok in his last 10 years or 15 years? Wherever he goes, he's got I had a privilege, of course, to go with him. He had a small bag, and inside there was a bottle of water, not so much to drink, and a small skottel. Is it skottel? Bowl. A bowl, yeah, but in Afrikaans. Yeah. So I wanted to call it because he called it that way. So he would carry it wherever he goes. And then should he get an opportunity where, because he knows that he have hurt a lot of people because of his position. So to show his remorse, he would ask, can I wash your feet? And some people, they would take it, oh, this sentimental, this is just, but for him, because I had the privilege to work with him, he would be so sincere, you know. So he asked French, can I wash your feet? Said, no, why? And then he insisted, and eventually Chikane gave in. And then as he washed the feet of French Chikane started to cry. And he says, you know why I'm crying? My mother, who was now late, French Chikane's mother, he said, my mother got a phone call many years ago, not many years ago at that time. And then the phone call was, I guess, you know, in Afrikaans, so and so, we're looking for a child. Actually, we are coming to your house now. So they came and they fetched Frank Chikane's mother. You can imagine Frank Chikane at that time, his mother, because Chikane at that time must have been when this happened, must have been in his 40s. So you can imagine the mother, how old was the mother, you know. So the mother was frightened. So they came and remember those yellow police cars? Yeah. They put the mother there. And then while they were driving, they were in Soweto. It's from Naledi, French guys from Naledi. So he could hear this police talking with another police. And they're talking about Frank Chikane's brother, or Frank Chikane's brother. And they're saying, yeah, he's on this train. The train is coming. And then they kept talking about him. So, yeah, he didn't get out of this train station. He must be getting out of this. Said, no, you keep telling us. And then he got another phone call from the same guy. After a few minutes, he said, when we found him, what must we do? He said, shoot him on the spot. So, Frank Chikane said, as you wash my feet, that's what I remembered. And Vlok said, you see the things that they were done in my name. And I didn't know this. A lot of things that were done in my name because I was a minister of police. And then he said, eventually, the mother, I think she just collapsed. Thank God Frank Chikane is still around. He shares that story. So God told him to wash the feet of Frank Chikane, and he did. And he said, immediately after he finished, something broke. And he knew that the spirit of racism, the spirit of Baskab, whatever it is, he was delivered. He says, since that day, he decided to go and share and go around to tell his Afrikaners about what has happened to him. But he told Chikane, please don't tell anybody, because he was scared of what will his white people say about a white person washing the feet of a black person. But he said at the bottom of the black's feet is white. You know, he realized that. Yeah. So I can tell you, let me indulge myself with one last story. There are many of them. You know the guy called the veteran Afrikaner journalist, the one Max de Pries. Yeah. So one day we were invited in University of Free State, Vlok and I. We went there and we were treated. We were staying in this posh building. Everybody was, you know, we treated them like the poor, and we didn't care. You know, so we didn't care. We were like, wow. So then it was a big. I mean, you know, Skalk. Every year they have a conference. This Christian organization. So most of them is young people. They are mixed, black and white, but most is full of Afrikaners, and they invited Dominier and all that. So our session was the last one, and it was packed. And I enjoyed those. I mean, we did that in Cape Town, we did that in Port Elizabeth, We did a number of them here. We did one in Verenigheid. We did one for the Anglican Synod, which is mostly black people. Oh, they gave him a hard time. Most of those priests, they were in solitary confinement in Vlok's era. So let me not even go there. Just want to tell you these. So going back to the University of Free State, so we're sitting there as I do just chat and all, and then that time comes. So I would like, I mean, because we were friends, and then I would like, in an intimidating way, Vlok, have you killed somebody? Vlok, have you? So it would be like that. And then after we finish, of course, we'll open it for other people to comment, interject, whatever. And there was this tall Afrikaner, Dominic, he stood up, which was angry. Said, my name is so and so. His surname is Depries. He says, Max is my brother. You know what you did to us as a family. He confronted him. You closed the industry, our company, and you sued us, so much money. And then to this day, we haven't been healed. And then he said, oh, Yere, and then he would go like, Yere, and he would look at me, Trevor, the things that we have done in the name of apartheid. And he would say, let me tell you, I have a number of people, maybe 10 or so. And these people are the ones that I've went to them to ask for forgiveness. Bishop Tutu, one of them was Winnie Mandela. So I tried to go to Winnie Mandela. I've gone to these people privately to go and ask for forgiveness. One of them was Max, but I didn't have his address. So I would like you, when you're done here, we meet separately, and then you give me his number. But then he asked, he said, "Vra vir jou what in Afrikaans? The forgiveness." Yeah. And then we went on. I don't want to go to the details. Fast forward, a few months later, he asked me to accompany him. He said, oh man, that man is angry. That man is angry. So we flew to Cape Town, where Max stays. So we met, oh, they welcome us. Vlok was terrified. He was scared. And then we got in there, and then we sat down and we ate. And without wasting of time, I mean, at that time he was in his late 70s, was struggling. And for me to see this figure who could take a phone or go into a Zoom, because there was still a Zoom then, just talk with, he must have been 81. I think he was 81 years old. He could just take a phone, put a Zoom, and then ask for what that way. Yeah, ask for that. And then he said, no, I want to go there. And he flew. And I saw him struggling. They had to put him on this thing, pick him up, literally. And then he would struggle. And he said, if this is what it means for me to ask for forgiveness, I'll do it. And then he got there. And then Max said, listen, I'm a journalist. I've been following your story. You go around asking for God's forgiveness, and I trust you. You didn't need to come. He said, no, I'm here to ask for forgiveness. I said, oh, I'll forgive you, but I need to tell you, just today, Friday, it was Friday when we went there. And it wasn't an honor for me as a young person, a black young person, to be treated, to usher these people or to facilitate reconciliation, between two Afrikaners of different generation. I mean, I felt honored, And I know it has to do with that prayer that I told you about from there in Soweto. And then he then knelt and asked, can I wash your feet? He refused. And then he pushed again, eventually, and he struggled. So because I'm not computer literate, so I had my camera, to pick up that moment. I forgotten to press play. Is it play? Yeah. And then so I mean, this guy struggled with his knees. And then when I realized, oh boy, I didn't press it. Can you start again? And then he started and he said, oh Trevor, I'm tired. But let me stop there just to say to you, reconciliation in this country has become a dirty word. because we cheapen it. We have not even went through it. Sometimes, I mean, the TRC, not only white people, even the black people didn't go to the TRC. It was amazing. I went to a few sessions. For my PhD, I had to read some of those volumes. I had to read Bishop Hugh. And then you get amazed what we have done. So let me stop here and then take question, comments, testing. I must be honest, maybe since Vlok died, I have not had a privilege to talk about this. And before he died, he phoned me. He said, I'm going to a hospital. They say they need a head operation. So because of my age, they told him I might not make it. This was September last year. So Trevor, I just want to say to you, thank you for walking the journey with me. Thank you, thank you. I said, come on, Vlok, you won't die. And he said, Trevor, thank you, thank you. Just want to say thank you. I salute you. God be with you until we meet again. And of course, he didn't die. He died last year in December. When I got the message, I was sitting by myself. I was at Skalk's place. In fact, I was at your house. When I got the message that Vlok had died, I was like, I felt God's sense of approval. That it is. Because as a black person, you don't want to be associated with people like that, because you're proud of your political clout, your political context. You don't want to be seen. But because of God, you have to do away with your identity and all that and say, this is Christ who leads me. And I'm proud that I did that. I'll do it again. Stop that.
Does Vlok ever get to meet Winnie? And then secondly, what about some of the other, big apartheid greats? Did they ever connect to him, or was he able to?
Yeah, he met with Bishop Tutu
as well.
He met with Bishop Tutu.
No, I mean, sorry, with our main sort of the proponents of apartheid, some of the other ministers and big guns that were actually designing and propagating the system.
No, what happened is that, I'm sorry I didn't mention this. Vlok was the only person, when you talk about the echelons, the high echelons of the apartheid, he was the only one who said, I'm going to the TRC. The rest, if you remember, even on the side of ANC.
Even post-TRC.
Because at that time, there was a time where it was closed. Not only within the nets, even within the ANC, because there were atrocities that the ANC made that they made in the exiles. We know the stories. Actually, one of the persons for my PhD I interviewed was Dalumpov, the controversial Dalumpov. And then he was telling me, I said, but you guys, TRC, Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and then not even one of you at the top echelons, he did not even go to the TRC. Well, they went, we all know that. But the amnesty section, where you go and plead and say, I disclose this, none of them went except Vlok. And this is not from Trevor, this is documented. When you do a thesis, you have to prove, sources, you come with sources. So it's written, it's always there, it's almost there, So I had to use that, So Vlok was amazing. He worked with a guy who was his deputy. I think you know him, Professor Leon Vessels. He was his deputy. I confronted him. I said, Leon, you were working with this man, and then tell me, how come you didn't do this? I said, oh, Trevor, let's not even go there, So all these other guys, I mean, P.W. Botha, according to Vlok, he went to him, he said, I feel God wants me to go to the TRC. And I just wanted to let you know, he says, if you go there, I don't want anything to do with you. You go there by yourself. Yeah. And he went there knowing that you could be imprisoned and all that. He said he trusted the Lord. Of course, he was never imprisoned, but was given 10 years,
Suspended.
Yeah. He couldn't see his grandchildren because they were in Australia.
how do we support reconciliation in this country? We talk about superficial relations there are. What would you say to that young black woman who said there can be no reconciliation without justice? We will not love you until there's justice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I did make a comment about reconciliation as a dirty word. I don't mean theologically, the way, yeah. And it is true. When was the last time you hear the word reconciliation? I mean, you know, it's as if you have done it. But you know, when you talk about reconciliation, you are acknowledging that the word reconciliation is for enemies. And then you must agree that we are enemies. At least theological. When Jesus reconciled us, God loved us before we loved him. So, and then it also shows us that in South Africa, the spirituality of our Christianity, if there's such a thing, but I think it makes sense, is not deep enough to be able to handle the realities of South Africa. The polarization, the relational polarization. So when you talk about reconciliation, you realize how poor, how empty, how shallow is the spirituality of our churches. So I must be honest with you, as Trevor, I've been a pastor, I've been a member of the Vineyard Church for more than I joined the Vineyard Church, 1988. I had a privilege to meet John Wimber and all these top guys. I mean, as I told you, she can tell you. I mean, you know that. And then we don't do a lot of work regarding the reconciliation. We are nice, you know. We are okay, you know. And it's not only us. You go even to other churches, and when Malema says something, we get and then like tomorrow we think, oh, Mapogopoko will unite us. Rubbish! It's just a sport. Our realities are deeper than Mapogopo. The solution of this country is not political correctness or political incorrectness, whatever it is, or ideologies, is the Lord Jesus Christ. Unless we do that, Christian schools must popularize in the township, not in the nice suburbs where there's no problems. If you want to change people, take those Christian schools, plunge them into the township and teach Christian ethos. And then maybe we can talk something. Sorry, I was getting like